Nobby's signal station recorded a graphic story of the overnight gales, the dense red register showing winds consistently battering the region at speeds of more than 100 kilometres an hour. The peak recording was shortly after 10 p.m. when the gale gusted to 136 kilometres an hour. Remarkably, the city showed little damage this morning. Several trees were brought down, but main power lines were unaffected. A Shortland County Council spokesman says strong winds earlier in the year appear to have exposed any weaknesses in the power grid. Not so lucky, boat owners at Lake Macquarie. While most vessels were riding happily at anchor, others hadn't fared so well. The winds eased as the day progressed, gusting to about 100 kilometres an hour at midday and markedly dropping throughout the afternoon. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
The Nationals have held the federal seat of Lyne for 43 years. Sitting member Bruce Cowan will resign at the next federal election, and Labor's Dennis Driver has every intention of breaking the Nationals' stranglehold.
If I've detected anything in the electorate of Lyne, it's a mood for change. People want to change. They're tired of being the victims of the safe seat syndrome.
The former television journalist defeated Tari businessman John Hackney in a pre-selection ballot at the weekend. If Mr Driver wins Lyne in the next federal election, he'll create local history by being the first Labor candidate to do so. He plans to fight the election on issues such as the privatisation of Port Macquarie Hospital. Mr Driver claims the Nationals have failed to represent the people of the area in the debate.
They want to give away that hard work to their mates in private enterprise. Well, it's not on. And the people in Port Macquarie, when they vote at the next federal election, are going to register a huge protest on this issue.
The Hunter coal industry was under scrutiny today. Employers, union and government representatives all took part in the day-long talkfest. The problems facing the industry were canvassed, particularly those of the underground mining sector. Boss of Oakbridge Limited, Keith Ross, says the restructuring of coal mining has increased productivity in both open-cut and underground mines. However, he believes that in the current export market, long-wall mining is the way to go if productivity is to be increased.
I certainly believe there's a future for underground mining. It'll revolve about longwall mining, which already in its right application in the right mining conditions is competitive with many of our open cuts.
General President of the United Mine Workers, John Maitland, says for the mining industry to survive, a comprehensive industry plan is required. Minister for Primary Industry and Energy, Simon Crean, also addressed the meeting. He foreshadowed a major new open cut and underground mine in the Saxon Vale-Bulga area. The open would provide up to 150 new jobs. At an international level, the Minister says a key part of the coal industry strategy relates to trade. Australia is continuing to press for reduced trade barriers. Jane Anderson, NBN News. Tragedy can happen in an instant. The ability to respond quickly to a life-threatening situation is one of the most valuable attributes of the Angel One rescued chopper. Today, the skill of crewmen was tested in a simulated rescue on Newcastle Harbour. This is the sort of situation the helicopter is often called to. A man washed overboard who without help may otherwise drown. A crew member was dropped into the water near the man in trouble. A cable and harness were then lowered to the two men. Despite the windy conditions, they were gently lifted to safety. This was valuable practice for the crew. The next time they do this exercise, it'll be the real thing.
They're an African group known as Kakalika. The Sydney-based band plays the traditional music of West Africa and Ghana. Now they're in Armidale, working with the music department of the University of New England, teaching and playing for the students.
One of our students had an idea that we should do something, the music department should do something to support the people in Somalia, so we're donating all the proceeds to the care and child organisations.
Known as the Spirit of Relaxation, the music tonight will take on a different purpose as the band plays to aid those starving in Somalia.
Really happy to be here to play to raise funds and for the Somalia people, to put it that way. So we're really happy about that, to be here to be part of them spiritually.
Proceeds of the concert, to be held in the University Bistro, will go to the Children Health Improvement and Life Development Organisation, which works in conjunction with Care Australia.
The wheels are still turning for now. Newcastle's Police Rescue Squad has been instructed not to comment on the issue, leaving any future verbal duelling to be done in Sydney. However, it may not have much of a future. Newcastle's Fire Brigade may be accredited as early as next month.
I have no doubt in my mind that the Fire Brigade come October will pass that assessment accreditation with flying colours.
Even today, firemen are undergoing intensive rescue training. If and when the brigade is accredited, then...
Like other areas within New South Wales, there'll be devolutions of the police rescue squads.
The Deputy Regional Commander says he sympathises with squads facing the axe, but says nothing will really change.
The Fire Brigade role will go back to fighting fires and carrying out rescue, which it has had for many, many years.
Anthony Griffiths, NBN News. Relying on a wheelchair or walking aid is tough enough, but to be further disadvantaged by being unable to gain access to banks, post offices and shops, well, that makes life even more difficult. In an effort to educate the community and improve facilities, the healthcare services in the Manning area put some councillors and residents in the hot seat for an hour or so to experience life in a wheelchair firsthand.
These places have made some attempt at access, and it's tremendous what they've done, but we think we can improve things a bit.
The group was given a list of challenges to do, highlighting difficulties the elderly or disabled do suffer.
We've hoped that these are the decision makers in the area, and we're hoping that they will make an impact.
Tari Showground was the venue for both a commercial expo and a spring fair. The money raised will go to an organisation which advises small businesses on how to stay in the black. As part of the light entertainment, locals took part in a gumboot throwing competition. Meanwhile, further up the coast, 3 primary schools in the Ballina area joined forces to hold a giant country fair. Hosted by the Tintinbar Primary School, a huge crowd turned out to enjoy all the traditional fair activities, and Dreamworld's Kenny Koala and Belinda made the trip across the border especially to entertain the children.
It hasn't been a good road trip for the Hawks. On Friday they were toppled by the Gold Coast, and last night the Falcons, led by Everett Stevens, doubled the dose. Stevens bagged 9 points in the first quarter. Newcastle went to the break leading by 13. In the second quarter, the Falcons were devastating. Terry Dozier, Al Green and Michael Johnson combining, Illawarra shot to pieces. At half-time, Newcastle held a 28-point lead. The Falcons have been guilty of not going on with the job in season 92. Once again, we saw the Hawks trim that lead to 16 at three-quarter time, and Newcastle just held on to win by 10, 106 to 96.
Eleven bands from Hunter schools took part in a day-long rock fest at Newcastle Workers Club. The musicians had the chance to compete for band equipment worth $3,000 and the opportunity to gain valuable experience.
There's a couple of different purposes. One is to encourage young school bands to get out there and play before their peers, and also just have a good time doing it.
The competition was won by a band called Shadow Rain from Warners Bay High School.
Hosted by the evening branch of the Armidale CWA, the show has attracted more than 70 dolls from the Tamworth, Armidale, Lismore and Newcastle areas. Complete in every detail, the dolls appear almost lifelike on display in the town hall. The doll of the show was awarded to Alstonville's Susan Cross for her French doll, complete with bows, buttons and lace. With the judging over, the dolls are being prepared for public viewing. Money raised from the show will go to local charities.
Around 200 fans, from those that can remember when the battle began to play in the Winfield Cup way back at the end of the 70s and the early 80s, to those who have grown up with the team since 88, and to those like 7-week-old Alex Ward, maybe a Knight of the future and definitely a supporter, wave farewell to the Knights as they left Marathon Stadium. The players themselves went out of their way to sign a last few autographs, footballs and flags before heading off for their second big clash at the Sydney Football Stadium, this time against St George, who according to David Waite should be the favourites, not the Knights.
They are the second best attacking team in rugby league, and they finished second outright in the competition. If on 80 minutes of football they want to change their mind, that's fine. The pressure's on the team that was 7 days ago touted as being the one that was going to play Brisbane in the grand final, and they just find themselves playing us in a sudden death. We know we're going to be playing sudden death football each week, so we're prepared for it, and I don't think there's a great deal of pressure on us at all.
In the first round, Newcastle belted the Dragons at Cogra in a rousing performance, sparked by one of the tries of the year to flying winger Robbie O'Davis. However, that was mid-season, and this is a sudden death semi-final.
They know the job is in front of them. We had a fairly hard game against St George last time. I know we came out victors, but that doesn't mean anything on Saturday. They're stung and they're wounded, and like any great sporting team or sporting person, they tend to bounce off the canvas pretty well, and we expect a very torrid game on the weekend.
An added bonus for the Knights come game time. When they run under the Sydney Stadium turf, they will be met by a sea of red and blue support. Plus, courtesy of a last-minute permission, the trusty Steed and his knight in shining armour looking for a dragon.
Sitting third on the NBL ladder, Melbourne was supposed to account for Newcastle without too much trouble. But somewhere along the line, the Falcons didn't get their copy of the script. Newcastle raced to a 13-4 lead. The Tigers were having trouble getting off the ground. Then they clicked. The human highlight, Leonard Copeland, cutting loose. Copeland and Andrew Gaze combined to send the Tigers to the break with a 2-point lead. In the second quarter, Newcastle's big guns came out blazing. Everett Stevens and Terry Dozier doing the damage. Half-time, the Falcons were up by 4 and flying high. Copeland was keeping the Tigers in the hunt. But in the final quarter, the Falcons just kept getting better. Al Green was on fire. Falcons by 14, they received a standing ovation. And were they happy?
The regional library service based in Tamworth has been operating for almost 40 years. It provides for the supply and rotation of books throughout member libraries in 11 shires, including Gunnedah, Uralla, Walker and Parry. Recent restructuring of the service has seen administrative duties contracted out to Tamworth City Council, enabling professional library staff to spend more time on the job. According to Gordon Mallett from Tamworth Council, all member shires except Narrabri have supported the changes. With Narrabri already missing 2 deadlines to commit its support, Mr Mallett says a new service excluding Narrabri will be formed, becoming effective October next year. Around 8 this morning, police believe this eastbound refrigeration truck, fully laden with beef carcasses, was attempting to negotiate a bend when it flipped onto its side, then going into a 180-degree spin. In the process, the truck collided with this westbound Falcon sedan, the driver escaping with minor injuries. The truck driver was taken to Lismore Base Hospital, also suffering minor injuries. He was later released. One lane of the highway was blocked for more than 7 hours, with police having to wait for the carcasses to be removed before the wreckage could be cleared. The Fiesta, in its 31st year, is bigger and better than ever. Several thousand people lined the main street to catch a glimpse of the spectacular Grand Parade. And there was plenty to see, from scouts and stilt walkers to beauty queens and marching bands. Then it was time to stand your ground for the popular tug of war. And for the more energetic, a 7-kilometre run up Mount Chincogan and back.
The final was a battle between Queensland's Ian Schuback in the cap and Dennis Katunerich from Western Australia. Schuback opened well and was the early pace setter before Katunerich hit back in fine fashion. The veteran Sand Groper stormed away in the latter stages to snatch a thrilling 25-21 win over Schuback.
Hundreds of balloons were released by the students of Maryland Public to mark the official opening of the school. The surrounding suburb of Maryland is growing at a rapid rate. Already tenders have been called for stage 2 of the school, more classes and a multi-purpose centre. Newcastle City Council has expressed interest in joining with the Education Department to build the hall. It would then be used by both the school and the wider community. School Education Minister Virginia Chadwick officially opened the building. Tomorrow her attention will turn to the release of the state budget.
In the middle of the worst recession or depression since the 30s, to make sure that the levels of funding that I think have brought such benefit over the last 3 or 4 years, that I can maintain those. All going well, I hope to.
Meanwhile, 10 Catholic schools took part in a performing arts festival at Newcastle City Hall. Each school presented a number of acts, including plays, dances, poetry and music.
The Ombudsman's 67-page report was released early last week, and according to the Concerned Citizens group, almost everyone in Narrabri has a copy. The group is less than impressed with the findings and has decided to stage a public meeting on Wednesday to discuss the report.
And as far as I'm personally concerned, it doesn't in any way incriminate anybody as far as it's concerned. It is a report really of very little substance, cost a lot of money to produce and doesn't mean very much.
The report stated the method by which suspended Councilman Cess Cotton and Warwick Armstrong gained donations for the council's social club was wrong. Harry Illingworth of the Concerned Citizens group says the allegations in the report against the councilman can't be proved and aren't warranted.
They haven't made one comment on how they've been criticised. The President certainly hasn't.
The council itself also came in for criticism, but Harry Illingworth says the report is little more than a toothless tiger.
It's a toothless tiger, there's no doubt about that. He can only make recommendations. That's all he's ever been able to do. It's up to somebody now, the council, the public or somebody, to take some actions on these sort of things.
Mr Illingworth says Wednesday night's meeting at Narrabri Bowling Club will be open to the public, not held in committee as done so often in the past few months by council.
This council has met more in committee in their first 12 months of election than normal council meets in its 4 years.
Wednesday's meeting will also discuss the dumping of Narrabri Library from the Namoy Collective. Mr Illingworth says his group has had nothing to do with circulating petitions regarding the situation, but should the Shire take on the responsibility of running the library, it will cost a lot more than anyone has bargained for.
I think they should remain in the regional library or join another regional library. I can see it politically, financially impossible locally to run a library successfully.
Up to 600 delegates are attending the Australian Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Combined Industry Conference at the Western Suburbs Leagues Club. Wholesale and retail members of the produce industry from around Australia have come together for the first time to discuss export and marketing potential. A Fresh Food Expo will also be open to the public on Wednesday. If there's one problem facing the fresh fruit and vegetable industry, it's that things are too good. A couple of flood-free years and fine weather has led to an oversupply of produce. Prices are down, some growers getting less back than what it costs to grow their crops.
Unfortunately, we've only got a population of 17 million people. With the great expanse of country that we've got, we are capable with technology today to grow product for 170 million people, and this does create hassles.
The windfall for Newcastle is income generated from hosting such a conference. There are financial flow-ons to transport, catering services, decorators, printers and accommodation. 5,500 motel beds will be filled by the time another convention for the Network 21 sales group checks in at the end of the week.
Benefit in financial terms, first, those two conferences are injecting $3 million into the city's economy, but at the end there are jobs, and I think a lot of people are at least keeping their jobs or getting employed in the tourism industry.
The posse rode into town this afternoon, a convoy on horseback from the back blocks against a city backdrop. Sue Ellen Lovett could not see the welcoming words, but the message was clear. Her journey was over and she'd raised $30,000 for Lions Saveside Foundation.
Makes you get a really nice feeling inside.
Sort of like Fred Hollows on a horse. She's no surgeon, but since 1984, Sue Ellen has clip-clopped almost 10,000 kilometres and raised $300,000 for charity. Guide dog Tara had a free rein today, her mistress occupied by a larger four-legged friend. Sue Ellen says life on the road can be tough.
Vehicles are fast and trucks are big.
But so too are the hearts of those she met along the way.
Hello Lisa, how are you? Good. Good. Good ride? Had a good ride?
Little Lisa Martin, blind and a firm favourite. Well, sometimes just firm.
Just meeting this lovely little lady up here from Coonabarabran. Lisa's blind and she came down to finish the...
Coonabarabran.
Where are you from?
Barradine.
Oh, Barradine, sorry. And she's come down to ride in with me.
Anthony Griffiths, NBN News. That's the motto of the Hopetown Special School, learning to live. The kids here are disadvantaged, both intellectually and emotionally. Today, they put on a show for the VIPs. New South Wales Governor Rear Admiral Peter Sinclair spoke. Former Premier and now Hopetown Director Neville Wran talked about a school which is leading the way in developing living skills and vocational programs for disadvantaged students.
We harbour the desire and the ambition that this school will be taken as a model for special children within the state education system.
The Governor unveiled a commemorative plaque, a tree planting ceremony complete of the tour. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
He's often been the victim of some big hits on the football field, and Sterlo took some heavy knocks last night.
Peter Sterling is constantly thrust into our faces as some sort of role model for today's youth. Fortunately for the future of society, it's obvious that not too many of our youth have decided to accept the challenge.
It's called a roast, where so-called celebrities are hell-bent on destroying the character of one of their own. Andrew Denton, Gavin Miller, Junior Pearce, former Eels skipper Steve Edge and Ray Warren all had a dig. The brunt of the attacks? The former halfback's prominent nose and a receding hairline. Ray Warren saying the loss of the locks has been Sterlo's saviour, presenting the footy.
Little does he realise gentlemen have got to do the job because they've saved costs in providing hairdressers.
Sterlo put his hide on the line for some good causes. More than $30,000 was raised for the Cancer Council and for the victims of crime. Peter Ryan, NBN News. The Forestry Commission nurseries are undergoing a change, with a central business unit being set up in Sydney. The 10 existing nurseries have been split, with 8 being scaled down, while the other 2, including Inverell, will be elevated to super nursery status to service much of the state.
We'll have to introduce new varieties here to cover the requirements of the other 3 centres we'd be growing for.
The transformation will be implemented over the next 5 years, expanding by 2 hectares and allowing for the planting of more than 2 million trees.